Hello, everybody. I'm back with the second presentation pertaining to reading a scientific paper. In this talk, I'm going to focus on sources of scientific literature and their quality. Now, broadly speaking, we can categorize the scientific literature into four main sources or categories. First one would be the textbooks. Second one would be scientific books. Then we have scientific journals. And finally, we have common media. That includes print media, television, social media. Now, we all use all these sources to variable degrees. What we need to realize that academicians try to focus on sources of literature that are scientifically robust. So if, for example, if I spent 20 years of my professional career reading scientific literature or scientifically robust literature, my mindset will be different than a person who has spent 20 years of his or her professional life only watching or reading literature from common media. And similarly, that person's or both of our perspective will be different than a person who has spent 20 years of their professional life only reading only reading textbooks or books. So for those who are early on in their career, it is important to realize or important to appreciate different types of scientific literature and then pick a path from there. Because whatever path you pick over years, that will build up your knowledge base and how much of an expert or not an expert you are in terms of scientific academics. Again, I have highlighted this point in many of my talks, or at least few of my talks, that my focus is not about professional development. So for professional development, you have manuals, you have clinical guidelines, you have professional seminars and webinars. So I'm not talking about those sources of information. I'm talking about scientific literature. Now let's go through each of these individually, or most of these individually, trying to understand scientific literature that stems from, or that is within scientific journals, is a big topic itself. So I'm going to prepare a separate talk for it, and that will hopefully be the next talk on this topic. So in terms of textbooks, we have basically two types of textbooks. One can be called as the curricular textbook, and the other ones can be called as reference textbooks. Now, curricular textbooks usually are used up to graduate level of education or undergraduate level of education. Once you get into postgraduate levels, you usually have to rely on reference textbooks. So for high school level or middle school level or even college or degree level, you usually have curricular textbooks. And these textbooks provide an overview of a subject, of a big subject like psychology or sociology or economics, or you pick a subject, or pathology or pharmacology, and they are prepared in a manner that it suits the culture, or it suits the subject area that one is studying. So because they are prepared by experts, their quality also depends upon the experts that are available in that field and in that country. So the curricular books or the curricular textbooks, even at graduate or undergraduate or high school level, are different in terms of their quality, their content, their scope, when we compare the Canadian textbooks versus Pakistani textbooks. And these books are largely used by students, and they focus on getting them prepared for exams that are essentially prepared from within those textbooks. In contrast, reference textbooks are more subject or a smaller subject specific. So if for curricular textbook, if we have something like textbook of clinical psychology, an example from a reference textbook would be something like a textbook of mood disorders or a textbook of cognitive behavior therapy. So these books pick a topic from within a broader subject area, and then they discuss it, write about it, and elaborate on that particular subject. Usually, the curricular textbooks at a graduate level, as well as reference books, involve many experts or authors. Now, to give you a very specific, one important point to remember is that, as I mentioned, that both these cases involve tens or hundreds of experts. Now, to focus specifically on reference textbooks, because these are textbooks that many people use after they have become a professional, it is important to understand some pros and cons of reference textbooks. I'm going to give you an example of a book that Vic and I, one of my colleagues and I, wrote a chapter in that book. Now, the book is very detailed. In fact, this is a book on psychosomatic medicine, which is considered as the topmost or within the top 2 or 3 textbooks on this subject matter. And as you can tell, it has been published by a very big publisher, Oxford Press. It is a huge book that has over 1,800 pages and 88 chapters in it. So it sounds to be a very thorough, very detailed book. And yes, it is from a professional's perspective. So it's a reference book. So someone who is working in psychosomatic medicine, if they are dealing with a patient, for example, who has cancer, and they want to look up something quickly, this book is a good resource. A few weeks later, they are dealing with somebody that has hepatitis or some liver disease. Again, this book will be a good book to look up some basic information. Or, as the chapter Vic and I wrote, if someone is dealing with a patient who has a heart disease, then again, this book will be a good reference to consult. So, usually, and as for this specific book, Amazon starts the description, a classic textbook of medical psychiatry covering a wide range of topics. So non-curricular textbooks cover a wide range of topics, usually focus on a smaller subject than the big subject that one has graduated in. So it's a good reference source. The drawbacks are that it only covers a small fraction of the literature. So even though, like the chapter Vic and I wrote, I don't exactly remember how many references we cited in it, but probably they were close to what we would cite in one scientific paper. So we can't have, for each chapter, have 10 pages of literature cited for it. And if you're trying to cover 10 pages of literature, or say 200 or 300 citations for one chapter, then the chapter will not be a 50-page chapter. It will turn into a 150-page chapter. So the literature covered in these books is huge when we take the whole book, because thousands of articles will get cited. But for specific area, the literature covered will be smaller. Another limitation is that it does not cover recent literature. For example, this is the current edition of this book, but it is 8-year-old. And as an author of a chapter in that book, I can tell you that the book, the editors needed a year before the book can be finalized for publication. So whatever we cited in our chapter was up till 2012 or 13. So these books are, depending upon when they were published, they are at least a year or two behind on the current literature. And if they were published 5 or 10 years ago, then they are even more behind on the current literature. And in some cases, when they are not hundreds of authors and several editors involved in publishing the books, these books may look more like non-textbook type of books. And I'll discuss that in the subsequent slides. So now let's get to non-textbook scientific books. Now, I want to make sure that you understand these 3 lines. There are a few points in these 3 lines. First of all, the point is that these books may or may not offer a balanced scientific perspective. These books may promote a specific theory or model. These books may promote a personal opinion, or these books may simply focus on appeal to the audience. And those are basically books that people write to make money. And so they write in a way that it appeals the audience, appeals general people or general masses, so that they can sell the book. Now, if we want to look at these books scientifically, we can basically draw an x-axis and y-axis. And on one axis, we talk about the literature, the scientific literature cited in these books. And on the other axis, we can talk about how balanced is the perspective. So you will find 3 major categories when we try to analyze or evaluate these non-textbook books written by professionals in terms of their content. So there will be books that do not cite much scientific literature. So they are not really scientific books, but they are trying to appeal to the audience. So they might poke an idea, scientific idea from here and then from there, and then mix and mash and mix all that with common themes that people in a particular society like to hear about or talk about, or they are receptive to, and they'll mishmash all that together and come out with a book. And because the book is written by professionals, many people will think that this is a scientific book. Instead, it will not be a scientific book. It will be just a book that promotes, that is used as a business. That's a book to earn money. And it just simply mishmashed common trends existing in a society with a bit of scientific literature, cited in the whole book, probably cited 20 or 50 studies, and then published that book. I would categorize that book as scientifically extremely poor quality book. Then we will have books that will cite variable degree of scientific literature. They will have somewhat balanced perspective, but they are focused on promoting specific theories and models. So these books are, we see a lot of such literature in psychology from 70, 80, 100, 150 years ago, when we did not have good paradigms, good scientific methodology. A lot of what was written was based on an individual's own interpretation of his or her anecdotes, personal experiences, whatever scientific models existed at that time with a bit of mythology or cultural beliefs or religious beliefs. So they would mix those and they will combine it into a form of a theory or a model. And so many of those models, now that we have scientific methodology, better scientific methodology, we are able to understand which of those models or theories hold some promise or they have been validated, and other theories and models that are still debated. So these books, I will categorize them somewhere in the middle when it comes down to scientific robustness. And then we will have books that are written in a way that they cite as much current or latest scientific literature in the field as possible, and they offer a balanced perspective. And these are books that would be academically and scientifically more robust. So example of this might be some book that is written by a group or one expert or a group of experts that discusses cognitive behavior therapy. So in that discussion, they will offer all the good literature that supports CBT. They will discuss the literature that does not support CBT. They will also at least have one chapter somewhere in there that talks about non-CBT therapies, and they will offer a balanced perspective. So those other books will be more scientifically robust. Now moving on to scientific literature and the media. So we have, in this category, we basically have three major categories. One is professional media, and these will be media that are run by professional or scientific organizations like American Psychological Association or American Psychiatric Association, or groups like Medscape. So these are professional media. So they are in terms of the content, they are almost entirely run by professionals. So they are very scientifically robust. So they will put the information in a language that is more easy to understand. They won't go into the details of the studies. They won't discuss the limitations of the studies at length, but they will still summarize a 6-page study into a page or a page and a half simplified version of it. So they are good. They are highly scientific in their content, but not as scientific as the original study or original general article for academicians. So they are good source to just keep up to date with what are the developments and what is happening in one's area of expertise or one's area of academic interest. Then we have quasi-professional media, and these are the media that are characterized by mixing scientific literature and with the common audience. So the audience is a common people like laymen or people who are not in that profession. And what happens, and this is a big group, so this group itself has a broad range in terms of scientific rigor or quality. So I can give you, like, if on one of my papers, for example, a media interviewed me, and the person who interviewed me then sent the written script to me to make sure that whatever that person has written and will be sharing as a common media note is accurate enough. So that will be a high level of robustness, because the person who is writing that piece, or who is going to talk about that piece in his video channel, on his video channel or some other platform, has validated the content with the author himself. Then we have categories where professional authors who are not professional necessarily in that particular field, but they have writing about that particular field for the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years. They write on scientific studies, but in a manner that it is understandable by laymen, by people who are not professionals. So they also are fairly robust, because those people have been, and in the West at least, those people will be, if someone is writing on how heart diseases relate to mental health, and the person has master's or PhD in media communications, that if that person is writing for the last 20 years, he or she will be very well versed in terms of the literature that he or she has been following for the last 20 and 30 years. So they will be able to offer a very good scientific perspective, even though they themselves are not scientific authors of that paper. Then finally, we have group where just a person who knows how to translate or how to have some understanding of a scientific paper writes it in simple language or translates it into a native language and then publishes it in a local newspaper or a magazine or something like that. So that will be the lowest quality. Then finally, we have common media. So common media is basically where non-experts may be talking about matters that are better spoken about by the experts. So those will be discussions on social media, discussions that just happen between non-professionals or professionals who are not necessarily experts in their fields. So that will be common media. So this category, we can then again draw two axes. One is how scientifically robust something is, and on the other axis, how much appeal to audience is basically the aim. So common media will try to do something that is scientifically not robust, and the focus will be to appeal to common people so that they can get more likes, they can get, if they are making money, so they can get more viewership, and that's how they will do it. If it's a television channel, they will invite people who are not necessarily experts, but who have a narrative that appeals to the public, so that they can bring that narrative up in the interview and they can discuss it, and that way they can get more viewership. And then there will be quasi-professional media that I explained, and the most robust, scientifically most robust, but least appealing to the public will be the professional media, because that talks about these things in a more scientific manner. So I hope you find this presentation helpful. It ends here. In the next one, we will focus on the scientific journals and how to approach scientific journals in terms of their quality and scientific robustness. I hope that I'll post it on my Facebook group. So I hope we can get some discussion around it, so that we can have a didactic type of learning as well. Thank you very much. Bye.